Make it pop. This needs to be more modern. If you're a designer, you've probably heard feedback like this hundreds of times. And let's be honest, it's frustrating as hell. But what if I told you that vague feedback is actually your biggest opportunity to stand out as a designer? After working with some of the fastest growing startups in tech, I've discovered something fascinating about design feedback that nobody talks about. In fact, the psychology behind why even brilliant founders and CEOs give terrible feedback will completely change how you view your design reviews forever. Through hundreds of design reviews, I've managed to reduce my feedback loops to an average of just 1.6 rounds. Today I'm going to show you exactly how. But first, we need to understand 3 psychological principles that explain why even the smartest people give vague feedback. Research shows that humans can recognize patterns 60,000 times faster than they can describe them. This creates what I call the articulation gap. When someone says, make it pop, their brain already has identified something's wrong.
Something wrong? Something wrong, yeah.
But they literally can't put it into words. Second, the curse of knowledge. This is fascinating. Once someone knows what they want, their brain physically cannot imagine not knowing that, which basically means they assume you have the same knowledge as them. When they say, make it more modern, they assume your understanding of modern is the same as theirs. And third, the status safety paradox. Here's where it gets really interesting. You'd think that the more senior someone is, the more confident they be in giving specific feedback, right? Well, I discovered something fascinating when working with dozens of founders and CEOs. Actually, the opposite is true. The more senior someone is, the more they fear looking unknowledgeable. It's what researchers call the status safety paradox. So I once had a client who constantly said, make it more modern. I had no idea what it means, but after probably weeks of frustration, I finally realized what was happening. He wasn't being vague because he didn't care. He was vague because he was worried that he might say something that's specifically wrong. And saying something wrong might undermine his value as a visionary leader. Think about it. If they say, make the button blue, and it looks terrible, they're directly responsible. But if they say, make it pop, they maintain their status while still guiding the design. This is why most successful tech leaders give vague feedback. They're not bad at feedback. They're unconsciously protecting their status, which could be undermined when giving wrong or weird design feedback. Now that you understand the psychology, let's transform vague feedback into your secret weapon. Imagine this scenario. You're in a design review and your CEO says those dreaded words. This doesn't feel premium enough. Most designers would immediately start adding fancy animations, gradients, and try to make everything darker. But remember what we learned about the status safety paradox? This is where everything changes. Instead of jumping into changes, here's exactly what to say. I hear you on the premium feeling. Could you point to the specific elements that aren't matching our market position? Then give them specific options to choose from. Is it the typography? Is it the spacing? Or perhaps the color palette? What happens next completely changed the conversation. They weren't actually concerned about the design looking premium at all. They were worried about our pricing page not justifying the higher prices compared to their competitors. See how different this is compared to what they actually said? Let me give you another example that happened just last month. A founder told me, can we see more options? Now, most designers would start creating 3 more versions. But remember the curse of knowledge we talked about? Instead, I said, before I create more options, help me understand what's making you uncertain about this direction. Are there specific user scenarios you're worried about? Turns out they weren't concerned about more options at all. They were concerned about mobile users struggling with the checkout process, which is a completely different issue than what we talked about before. These are just 2 examples from my experience. I also wrote about 8 more of those in my article that you can find below. This brings me to my T.A.P Framework for handling any type of vague feedback. The T stands for translate the feedback. First, match their vague feedback to common underlying concerns. Make it pop could mean there are hierarchy issues. More modern could also mean competition concerns. And something feels off usually is an issue with the user flow. The A stands for ask strategic questions. Don't ask, what do you mean? Instead ask, which elements feel least aligned with our goals? How does this compare to competitor X's solution? Or walk me through how you expect users to flow through this. And finally, P stands for present solutions as strategies. Don't just make changes. Present solutions like this. Based on our discussion, I see 3 strategic approaches we could take. The key is actually to transform every feedback session from a design critique into a strategic discussion. If you want to dive deeper into topics like this, I write about design psychology, product strategy, and becoming a more valuable designer every Sunday in my newsletter, The Full Stack Designer. Check out the link below to join other senior designers who are leveling up their craft. And if you found this helpful, hit subscribe and the notification bell to learn more about becoming a full stack designer. See you in the next one.